Hey guys, it's Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales here. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to set up tubeless on your bicycle. So first question is, what is tubeless? Well, the first thing that you need to know to understand tubeless is what the wheel normally looks like. When we look at the wheel, this circle piece in my hand, we've got the rim and we've got the tire, and we have to have something inside the tire to inflate it. Usually it's a tube. Tubes can unfortunately get punctured sometimes, whereas if we are tubeless, meaning we are without a tube, there is no tube inside there, there's nothing to puncture. So we have to replace that with something different. And that's when we use this stuff over here we call tubeless sealant. So in today's video, we're gonna go in depth into exactly how to do it. And make sure you stay around to the end so I can give you my pro tips for things that I've learned over 12 years of being a bike mechanic here. Now, if you've been following our channel for a little while, you might have seen a couple of weeks ago that we did a video about why you should go tubeless. If you've been subscribed since then, this is the video about how to go tubeless. And for the two of you that were subscribed over a year and a half ago, one of our very early videos that we did on this channel here, Recycle Bicycle Sales, was how to set up tubeless. I seriously think we had 2 subscribers back then, so I'd be very surprised if anyone remembers that video. Me and my cameraman here, we were learning how to do these videos as well. So I don't think it was amazing. So hopefully this one's a little bit better, but you can check that one out and let us know. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is, what do you need to go tubeless? Well, if I give you a very quick summary here, there's 4 parts that you need to be able to go tubeless. You need the correct tires, because there are tubeless ready tires and normal tires. You need the tubeless ready valves. You need tubeless rim tape and tubeless sealant. I just said the word tubeless 4 times. It's all tubeless, that's what this video is all about. So let me get myself ready and I'll show you what each of these different parts look like. So these are the parts that we're gonna need. Our tubeless ready tires. Now notice here on the packaging, it will always say tubeless if it's tubeless. If it doesn't say tubeless, it means it's probably not tubeless. This one here says tubeless ready, but this box, which looks almost identical, says tube type, so we couldn't use that one. So when you're walking into your local bike shop, make sure you say to the salesperson, hey, I need a tubeless ready tire, because there's a bit of a difference there. So make sure you're getting a tubeless ready tire. So you need the tire. You need the valve. It looks identical to a normal tube, except there's no big tube attached to it. So it's a little bit sort of easier, I suppose. Also, these tubeless ready valves have a removable valve core. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, but that's really important. We need rim tape. The rim tape for tubeless is a little bit different to just normal rim tape, although you can use tubeless rim tape with a normal tube. This is the better type of tape. It's kind of like a plasticky, really solid material. It's quite difficult to pierce and to puncture, whereas sometimes normal rim tape might have a bit more of a cotton finish, so it's going to soak up the liquid and it could eventually seep through, which means the tire is going to go flat. So not just normal rim tape or rim strips, you might be thinking of a rim strip. We want to make sure that it's tubeless ready rim tape. And then the final one is having some tubeless sealant. Heaps of different brands out there, do your own research. I honestly think they're all pretty good. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to quickly mention that YouTube sent us a message recently saying that 94% of people watching these videos haven't subscribed yet. So I just wanted to quickly say that we have tens of thousands of dollars worth of value in these videos, and we're giving it all to you for free. So if it is something that you appreciate and you want to help our small business succeed, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button down below. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Now, in terms of tools that you're going to need, you're going to want a valve core removal tool. If you can't track down one of these, you will be able to use some needle nose pliers, but it could damage it, so just gonna wanna be a little bit careful. You're probably gonna need a tire lever, because sometimes these tires are damn tight to get off, so make sure you've got that. We're gonna need a pump to pump it up. Now notice here that I've got a track pump or a floor pump, whatever you wanna call it. That way I'm gonna get the most amount of air per stroke. If you're just using a little hand pump, it's gonna be incredibly difficult, I might even say impossible, to pump the tire up on that first time, to bead the tire. And remember that old tube that you had in there? We don't need that anymore. So now that you've got all the different parts that you need set up so that you can go tubeless, the next step is we need to remove the tire and the inner tube. So with the power of editing, there we go. We've got the tube and tire completely removed. So the tube, we no longer need that, so we can put that to the side. And the tire, we are actually going to be replacing it with a different tire, one of the tubeless ready tires, so we're not going to need that anymore either. So now step 1 to actually setting up tubeless is we've got to make sure that we have the correct rim tape. Now there's a small chance that you might already have tubeless ready rim tape on there. If you do, you can skip this step. If you don't, you should watch this step. So this wheel actually already has tubeless ready rim tape, but for the purpose of this video, we're gonna replace it anyway. So to remove the old rim tape, what we need to do is find where the crossover of the rim tape is. Usually it will have done a full lap plus a little bit. So we've got to find out where it is. I tend to get something under there so that I can lift it up and peel it all the way off. Enjoy this fast forward of me unpeeling this rim tape. Now it's all completely removed. Now, since we are going to be sticking down some new rim tape, it needs to actually stick down. If there's some liquid in there, whether you've been cleaning the bike perhaps, or maybe it was tubeless before and there's a bit of sealant sitting in there or whatever, we need to clean this. This is a step that you want to be sort of pretty over the top with, because you don't want to put the tape down and for it to slide off. You want it to stick right where you put it. So I'm going to grab a nice clean rag and I'm gonna wipe around on the inside of the rim. Now I'm wiping over the spoke holes, but I'm also trying to get up against the bead of the tire just to be sure, sorry, the bead of the rim, just to be sure as well. I'm just trying to dry it as much as I can. That's what I'm trying to do. And just to be extra sure that it's as good as I can get it, I'm even gonna use some alcohol. I'm just gonna use some isopropyl spray and I'm going to spray it onto the rim. And since this is alcohol, it's gonna help to absorb and sort of dry up any of the liquid that's sitting on there already. So I'll leave that for a sec. And now I'm just gonna wipe away that alcohol and then I'm gonna give it a chance to dry a little bit as well. So now that we're putting the tubeless tape on, this is an important point that I'm gonna mention. There are different widths of tubeless rim tape. Different brands of rim and styles of rim are a little bit wider or narrower. So this one here is quite a bit thinner than this black one here. And this black one is also a bit thinner than the other black one. So they're all a little bit different. The best way to know what width you're gonna need, either jump on Google and type in the wheel that you've got, which is whatever it says here, and that would be the best way to do it, or easiest way to do it. Otherwise, if you were to just go into the local bike shop with your wheel and you put this tubeless tape inside there, you wanna make sure that it's gonna fit inside. If I looked at this one here, I don't know if you can see much, but it overhangs this side of the wheel quite a bit. So that would be too thick. So we'll go to a slightly narrower size. So now we're actually ready to put the tubeless rim tape on. Step one is we're gonna try and find where the valve hole is, because the valve hole is where we're gonna start from. So if we grab our tubeless tape, now note the valve hole is here. I'm gonna start about here, and then I'm gonna do a whole lap of the wheel, coming back to where it was, wherever I started that. And then I'm gonna come a little bit further so that we go over the valve hole twice. That way I can make sure it's a nice tight seal. So I'm just gonna start. You could do this on the floor like this. If you have a wheel true stand, you could use that. But for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to. So I'm gonna pull a little bit out. I'm gonna make this one nice and tight. So I'm holding it down and I'm pulling a little bit of tension. I'm pulling up on this a little bit, but I'm not trying to rip it. I'm just pulling a bit of tension on it. And I'm gonna do it in sections. Make sure that that's all stuck down and then move it across again. I'm holding this with my fingers so that it doesn't slip up. If you're pulling on here and it's sliding and it's not actually sticking down, it means that you probably didn't do this step well enough. So you might just wanna start again and clean it and dry it a bit more. So now I've crossed over the rim tape. So I've gone all the way back to where we started from, and the valve hole is here. So I want to make sure that we cross over at least there, or at least a bit past there. And I'm going to go to however far seems appropriate, and the valve hole was there, and I'm going to finish here. So now I'm going to grab my scissors, cut that nice and clean. The angle of the cut doesn't really matter here, but one that I sometimes like to do is on an angle like this rather than going like that. I really have no reason why I like to do that, but I think it sort of sticks down a little bit better. I've got nothing to back that opinion up, but that's the way that I like to do it. And then I'm going to make sure it comes down. And it's really important here not to have any air bubbles stuck under there. So the tape came this way, and now with my fingers, I'm pushing those air bubbles out. That way no sealant can accidentally get in under there and then in through these spoke holes. So that's completely perfect all the way around. It's not sort of wandering like this. It's going nice and central as well. And that will happen as you pull it tight, that will stop it from wandering. So that's why I was giving you that top tip there. Now, the valve hole, I'm going to use a little prick to find where that hole is. Another top tip that I've got here is with my finger, I can push down extra hard on the hole there so that I can actually see a little indent in the rim tape for where that valve hole is. So now in the center of that little hole there where the valve is, I'm just gonna poke the tiniest little hole. I call it like a pilot hole. So you can see how big it is here. It's actually tiny because I'm going to end up driving our valve right through there in a minute. So now that we've done our rim tape, we can move across to the next part, which is our tubeless ready valve. The way that I like to do this is I've got the valve core in there, it's tight like it's supposed to be, and I'm going to close the valve so that if it was a tube, air can't leak out. The reason I do that is it's poking sort of almost like a needle out of the valve core. So now that's going to go through that pilot hole that we just punched with a little prick, and that's going to make the hole as big as this black part, the actual valve. So it's just as big as it needs to be. It's not as big as the thing we poked through it. It's perfectly shaped to the size of the valve. So with our little pilot hole here, I'm going to put the valve in there, push it through, and then we're just going to drive it right the way through. A little thing that I just thought while we were filming that as well is if you've got a lock ring on the valve, which usually sits here, make sure that you've taken that off so that it's not going to be stuck inside the wheel. This one has a little rubber O-ring that's going to go up against the valve, and then we're going to grab our O-ring that I was just mentioning, tighten that all the way up, nice and tight so it's a good airtight seal. But just remember that one day you're going to have to undo it. So if you use a tool to tighten it up, it might make it incredibly hard to undo it eventually. But that is now completely set up. So now we're ready for the next step. And for the purpose of this video, we're gonna swap from this rear wheel across to the front wheel. We're up to the exact same step. Nothing has changed. We're just swapping to a different wheel. And now we're ready to put this new tire on. Now, being a professional bike mechanic like we all are, one thing that I always try and say is if we look at the tire, notice how there's a logo that's here. And if we go around, the logo's not here, and it's not here, and it might be on the other side sometimes, yes. I recommend, and this is just I don't know, an OCD thing or something, who knows? Try and line one of the logos up with the valve of the wheel. That way, when you're trying to find the valve, it's really easy to see it because it's right next to the logo. If you had the logo sitting here, it would just look a little bit less professional. So, as we are professionals, we're going to make sure that we line the logo up with the valve. As well as that, the wheel is directional and the tire is also directional. We know that the wheel is directional because it has a disc brake on it. If I was to put it like this, it would be backwards because the caliper, the disc brake caliper, is on the other side of the fork. So I would need to turn the wheel around like that. Same deal with the tire. Sometimes you can tell by there's sort of arrows or a direction on the tread, but if you look on the side of the tire, it will almost always have a little arrow that says rotation or direction. That means that it wants to spin that way. This one has the arrow facing that way, so it's imagining that the wheel's going to spin that way along the ground. So if I go around, find the logo, and I'm going to point it forward just to make it easy in my head. And then I'm going to put the wheel as if the wheel wants to roll forward. So they both want to roll this way. They're both directional and they're both pointing the same way. And now, because we are complete professionals, notice how on the tire here, it's got this little orange part here on both sides. Because I want it to look symmetrical as I can, I'm going to try, if I can, to put the valve right between the two so it looks the same on both sides, because the orange logo isn't in the same spot. It's kind of down like that. So I'm going to go between the two there. And let's see if it stays like that by the end of the video. Oh no, I can already tell this one's going to be tight. We'll see how it goes. Cool. So there we go. You can see where the orange logo is in relation to the valve. And then if I spin it that way, now it's perfect. Yep, I reckon that'll do. Cool. So now that I've got half of the tire on, it's on one side of the bead, but it's not on the other side. Now I'm going to put it on most of the way. Now we come to a fork in the road. We've got two different options of what we can do here. We can either leave the tire partly off while we pour the sealant in, or we can put the tire completely on and put the sealant in through the valve core. Now I've already seen that the box of sealant that he's brought in has a tool to put it in through the valve. So we're gonna do it that way, which I would argue is the easier way anyway. So Let's get the tire all the way on. And of course it's gonna be tight. Ugh. Got it though. Cool. All right, so let's do that now. So now that we're talking about putting the sealant in through the valve, what we need to do is remove the valve core. If we look really closely, we can see the black piece here is the valve and the silver piece is the valve core. So we want to remove that silver piece, the valve core. There's different tools you can use, or there's really only one tool, but it can look like different things. This time we've got a little metal one. Sometimes they look plastic. I'll show you what one of them looks like in a second. But we're just going to go on to the silver part here, and we're literally gonna unthread it. And the silver piece will be able to come all the way out, and that's it there in my hand. So that now, when we put sealant in through there, it's just gonna go all the way through because it doesn't have to try and squeeze past this little valve core. Let's do that again over at the table so I can show you a bit closer up. So here we've got the valve. Again, I was saying that the valve is the black part and the silver part is the valve core. This is what the valve core tools will typically look like. I see this one most commonly, but this one just came in the box with this kit. So that's the one that I just used in the video. What we're trying to do is slide the valve core remover tool onto the silver part, the valve core, and then that part will completely be able to unthread. And that's gonna take the valve core completely out. That's what we're doing here. So now the valve core is out, it means that we've got a completely straight hole in there. There's nothing that it has to try and slide. There's nothing that the sealant will have to try and slide through. It's just a perfect hole that can just lead straight into the actual tire, which is exactly what we're trying to do. In this little kit that he brought in, we've got a little tube here. You can also buy these from most local bike shops, different brands that come out there, but we've got a Shorby one here. So what we're going to do is open it up, and then we're going to pour sealant straight into there. I always like to give it a couple of little shakes just in case it's been sitting up on a shelf for a while and all the sediment sort of sitting down at the bottom. A little bit of a shake. Now, this here is 60 milliliters. I was just having a quick read of the bottle here, and it says that 60 mil is what they recommend for a 32 or a 34 mil tire. Pretty sure this was a 32. It is a 34 anyway. It's still one of those numbers. So I'm gonna fill this up, and we wanna get an entire bottle in there with as little spillage as possible. Now let's get the lid back on there. And this little blue piece is a little lid. So at the moment, it's not gonna leak out, but if I take off this little blue lid, now it will leak out. I'm not gonna turn it upside down like a silly Billy. All right, so we've got our wheel again. This is a step that you could do on the floor, or you could even put the wheel back onto the bike. Up on the workbench is probably not the best way to do it, but we're gonna do it anyway. What I'm trying to do here is pour all of this liquid straight into the valve hole here. It happens to be like the perfect size for it, so it's almost like it's designed for it. Anyway, so I choose to not have the valve straight down. I like to have it just up to the side like this, so that if I'm spraying it in, the liquid is gonna follow gravity. It's gonna go in here and it's gonna slosh down to the bottom part here. If I was going like this and I'm spraying it in, it might be spraying a little bit back because I'm squeezing all of that liquid straight in there. So on a little bit of an angle, I'm going to pour it in. And I'm just gonna squeeze the whole bottle into there. Now be ready that some of it might come out down here at the bottom. It might leak, so we're gonna try and keep it as clean as we can. Wow, no spill. That's pretty good. Actually, I'm not going to put the valve core back in just yet because we're going to bead the tire. This step that we're doing now, what we're about to do, this is the hardest part. So let's stand out there. I'm gonna grab my pump and we're gonna give this part a try. I'm gonna try it without using an air compressor first. So what we're doing here is we are beading the tire. Earlier in this video, I said that we were de-beading the tire. And by that, I mean that we were pushing the tire into the middle of the wheel. Now we're trying to pump it up so it can come out onto the side of the wheel. Since this is a tubeless setup, so there is no tube in there, air can leak out from the tire and sort of out through the wheel and out into the atmosphere. So we've got to get enough air in there quickly so that it's able to seal it up before any air leaks out. Sometimes you can do this with a track pump. Sometimes it's incredibly difficult. So you might need an air compressor or one of these like air compressor type pumps. I don't know what you call it, but I pump air into here and then it flashes it in. But for the purpose of this video, and because it might look funny, we're going to try and pump it up just with a normal pump for now. So again, note that I've got no valve core in there just yet. I'm just going to connect it on. The reason I've got no valve core on there is I want all the air to be able to go in. I don't want it to squeeze past that silver valve core. So if I pump that up, oh wow, I got it first try. Okay, usually that step is way harder than it looks just there. Sometimes you're pumping away like this and the air's just not getting in there, but this one went really well. So we're actually totally fine. So now that I've got a bit of air in there and I can see that it's beaded all the way around, it's not popping in at any point. Now I can take the valve, pump off, but since I don't have any valve core on there, it's gonna leak out really quickly. So I need to catch it with my finger. You probably heard it leak out quickly, and now I've caught it with my finger. So we'll get our valve core, and we're gonna try and put the valve core on there as quickly as we can with the smallest amount of spillage, but you'll definitely lose a little bit of air, so be ready for it. Okay, I lost all of the air, so now we're completely flat again. But that's all right, because it is completely beaded. Make sure it's tight. And now we can pump it up to the desired pressure, which I'm gonna say is probably like 60 PSI on this one. Quite low, because it's a really big tire. And now I'm gonna put this back into the bike, and then we'll move across to doing the other one. Actually, I'm not gonna put it back in there. I'm gonna clean a bit of the muck that I can see around there. Go in the wet part of the rag, so I can clean the brake dust off of here. Maybe this is a little bit over the top, but while I've got all the tools out, I may as well do it all. Bit of grease. Yeah, and it's still all beaded. Oh, I can hear that brake rubbing still. We'll definitely have to have a look at that brake. So now that you've finished doing the front wheel, you're gonna wanna do the exact same process on the rear wheel. You can see here that we've already done it. We've sort of skipped ahead in this video. So I wanted to jump forward and talk about a couple of quick disclaimers with tubeless, some things that you should know before you go tubeless or while you're going tubeless. The first one is that now that you have some sealant sloshing around inside there, if you were to get a puncture, something was to go into the tube and then come back out, the sealant that we put in there, that white goo, should hopefully clog up that hole. If you're out riding and you were to get a puncture and the wheel's spinning and it sort of moves around and it sits up here, my trick is to bring it down to the bottom so that gravity will do its job and it will bring the sealant all the way down to the bottom. The next thing I think is really important to talk about, especially if it's a brand new tire or brand new rim tape and you've just put sealant in there. If you leave it overnight, that first night, a lot of the air, if not all of the air, will leak out overnight. And then you'll come in the morning and you'll have a look at your bike and you've got a dead flat tire and oh no, I've done something wrong, and it's stressful. You haven't done anything wrong, you just haven't done the right process before you've gone to bed. My trick as a mechanic of what have I done 12 years now, is just go for a ride. Even just a lap of the block, 5 minutes on the bike, whatever it is, just go for a short little ride with your new setup, your new tubeless setup, just so that you can take the wheel through a few rotations and it's got your body weight sitting on the tire so it can sort of squeeze the sealant into the spots where it needs to be, into the grooves inside there and everything. That way, if you leave it overnight, it's not just gonna leak out all the air. I've heard this story I'm explaining right now hundreds, if not thousands of times from customers of mine who have had their bikes set up tubeless here, and then they've gone home and they call me the next day, Lewis, my tire's flat, what have I done? And then I have to say, this is what you'll do. You'll just pump it back up and it will fix itself, because that's the beauty of tubeless. So now, because I've had that conversation enough times, I now say when people pick up their bike from a service where they got tubeless set up, I say, just go for a ride when you get home, 5 minutes, lap of the block, whatever, doesn't need to be big. Just go for a ride so that the next morning it's all good to go. The next thing is that tubeless sealant will eventually dry up and sort of leak its way out. So you will need to top it up every now and then. That's where these little bottles come in handy. You saw me using this in the video earlier on. You might have bought a big bottle like this, but I recommend having a little bottle so you can just top it up. I recommend topping it up every 6 months or so. If you're riding every single day, you might need to do it a little bit more regularly, maybe every 3 months or so, but you just want to make sure that there's still some liquid in there. If it had all dried up and you haven't topped it up for a year and a little form went in and came out, since there's no sealant in there, the tubeless can't do its job. The sealant can't do its job because it's not there. So you want to make sure that you top it up every now and then. You can buy little bottles like this from any local bike shop. They're like 10 or 20 bucks, or you could buy a big bottle and top up your own. And now that you're set up tubeless, you might even be able to have a play around with your tire pressure. That could be a big reason why you chose to go tubeless. When you're running tubeless, since there is no tube in there, there is no tube that can be pinched. You can't get a pinch flap because there is no tube. So you might be able to run a slightly lower tire pressure, which is going to get you a little bit more grip, especially on a mountain bike. Also on a road bike, but especially on a mountain bike. So you can have a bit of a play around with tire pressure now. And because you've stayed around right until the end of this video, the top tip that I was talking about earlier is you still want to carry a spare tube. I've had it before where I've been riding along with tubeless and I've had I had a piece of glass and it put a big slice in the tire. Tubeless sealant is only so good that it can fix these little holes. It's not gonna fix a massive slice like that. So if I've got a spare tube in there, I might still be able to get home. You can still fit this in your little saddle bag or your bottle thing down here or whatever. So carrying a spare tube I think is still worth it because it will get you out of almost any problem. When I had this big piece of glass, I pulled over because it was a catastrophic failure. I found the piece of glass, took it out, took the wheel out, pushed the bead of the tire off, put my new tube in there, and then I had a $5 note in my pocket and I put that inside so that the tube wasn't gonna poke through that slash in the tire. Not ideal, but it got me home. So for that reason, I'm gonna say, make sure you still have that spare tube. Hopefully this video has taught you everything you need to know about how to set up your bike as tubeless. We spoke about the main steps involved with going tubeless, and we even spoke about a couple of things that you should know while you're doing it and some preventative measures for down the track. If you reckon that there's anything that we've missed, let us know in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I'm gonna say thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video. See you guys.